Hello, welcome to Chili's. It's your boy, the Ladybird. I am under the weather, pay no mind. So, what are we doing today? What have I got for you? Today we're gonna learn about sewing. If you like sewing, this one's for you. If you don't, maybe you'll learn something. If you have any questions, please feel free to holler, comment on this video, send me a DM, ask questions. One of us will know the answer, and if not, we've got the power of God, anime, and Google. So what we're going to go over is the machine basics. We're going to go over how a sewing machine works, all the pieces and parts on it, and how to thread that hoe so you can get going. Then I'm going to show you how to plan your project and how to read. I know, I don't know how to read either. No, we're going to read how to do the notations and how the fuck a sewing pattern works. And then we're going to make a microphone cover together. Most people have a SHURE SM7B that are streamers. Otherwise, this can be just your first thing. You can give it to somebody. Everyone knows somebody who has a fucking SHURE SM7B. It's funny. And then we're going to exist. Yeah, there you go. Anyway, here it is. So there's different kinds of patterns. There are commercial patterns, small business patterns, and personal patterns. So for example, I drafted this pattern and this is what we're going to be sewing today. And then we have one that I bought on the internet. I get them from on the resource. It has a list of a bunch of different places I get them from. This one is an English one. I've gotten Italian patterns that are translated. They're really good. I love that person. And then you have your typical commercials. So I put a list of brands. This is Butterick. This is my pattern I use for all of my button downs. There's a ton of markings on them. Yes, I fucked it up, so I added the piece that I fucked up. And then this one, it's the same thing. And then this is a single size. So when you get your pattern, when you're planning, what the fuck do you want to do? For example, I'm going to show you a commercial because this is probably what you're going to get first. So this is a commercial pattern. Yes, I see these things I want. There's different kinds of patterns in them. You usually don't get one thing in your pattern. So this one has 3 versions of the shirt. So that means that in my giant tissue paper, I'll have a shit ton of pieces. Some of the pieces I won't need. For example, this one doesn't have the front pocket. This one does. This one's got these weird fucking sleeves that'll have sleeve tabs. So after you select which one you want to do, so I do A. Then you see on this back all of this random ass bullshit. So this is telling you me at store. Me need to buy things. This tells you how much you need to buy. For example, I'm a little bit out of this size. I measure my size, have your size in your phone. You can look up online like your waist, your hip, your this, your that. And I know that my size is typically a 12. So I circled it and then I circled my measurements so that I knew to get the thing between. Now I'm this size because I'm a healthy weight. Yeehaw! And on here, that's how you know which size to do. So you pick the size 12, and then these are your actual notions on what to get. So fabrics, it tells you the suggested fabrics. This one says cotton blends, poplin, sateen, crepe. So I use cotton blends. And then your notions. So these are the pieces and parts that aren't fabric you need to get. For example, wow, buttons. You need to buy buttons. So it tells you how many buttons you need for this pattern. You need 6 half-inch buttons. And then on other things, it's all just fucking buttons. So then here is my size I want. So 12, and then that means that I need 2 1/8 inch. And you also need reusable interfacing. So you can get this in packs, or you can get it by the yard next to the fabric around like the back area. You can ask someone, they will help you. And then this is the finish measurements, and then this is for a different kind of fabric. Again, this is what it looks like. And yeah. Oh, the different sizing right here, 45 and 60. So 45 is the standard bolt. So a bolt is the entire thing of cardboard that your fabric is on when you're at the store. 60 is the super wide one. So some fabrics will have that super wide one. I always just go with the bigger number. Woo! So when I go shopping for like fabric for the shirts, I usually get 2.5 to 3 yards. Woo! I wish everything was in metric because it's stupid that I'm like, I need this. Also, any patterns you buy online, they will have the same notions and fabric type that you should buy on like the second piece of paper. So the first paper will be like a title, this is what you're gonna make. And then the next one will be the notions, and then it'll have the sizing. And then you do the same thing as you do on the pattern I just showed you. You choose based on the sizing, the amount of the amount of fabric you should buy, and all of the other bits and pieces and baubles. So when you actually have your pattern, when you're cutting it, you get a giant old piece of paper, and then you select your number. So I'm doing 12. So I cut around the specific piece that looks like it. You'll have different size dashes, and then you cut around those pieces, and then you have your pattern. If you're doing a pattern you bought online, so that's my preferred method. Like I won't get these kinds of patterns unless I'm at Joann's and I'm like, woo! So you can just go on Etsy, buy a pattern, print it out, and immediately have it in your hands. I love it for 4 a.m. me want to sew thing right now, or I get a custom order they want. For example, this tie at the specific shop. So as you can see, it has the sizing written on it. So I wanted a large, and it's color coded too, instead of this paper that's tissue paper. So then you just do the colored line around. If colors are hard, they also have, you know, typically most patterns have a different like dash system on it, so you can see here the actual different colors. And then on mine it's one size, so you just fucking cut around it, and then the dashes are just weird shit. You'll see. And so this is showing a good example of what a seam allowance is. So the seam allowance is this little space right here. So this is where your thread is actually going to be. This is where your fabric's going to be. So for example, this already has a seam allowance included. So it will actually be, the fabric will be this big, and this is where the needle will be. Woo! Yeah. And then there's all kinds of different indentations, markings on your actual patterns that you need to transfer after you cut everything. For example, this is a collar band. So this is what the collar goes on to connect to this neck piece onto this, I look like I'm touching a titty, I swear I'm not, to the chest piece. Transfer all the markings, la-di-da, these are the notches, those are important, all those little markings, that's a buttonhole, blah, 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 blah. Grain line, little stretch, you can Google all of these little definitions, it's very helpful. That's how I learned. I didn't just like go to school, I just did patterns, and I learned each piece as I was making things for fun. But yeah, little thing you'll need to know is, yes, grain line, this is the direction of your pattern on your fabric. So if I was, pretend this is your fabric, this is your pattern. The pattern is, I'm looking at it dead straight, and this is perfect. Grain line, you want it to be with the grain line, so this would be at an angle. It's also stretched too commonly with fabric. So yeah. Hello, welcome to Chili's. I'm going to be teaching you today how to string this machine. It's going to be a lovely day. Pay no mind to the music. I'm sick. This is recorded weird. Fuck you. Whatever. Anyway, so I'm going to teach you what parts are on this machine, and I'm going to teach you how the fuck to plug it in and all that fun stuff. So, step 1, plug this bitch in. So you've got 2 plugs on a machine, typically, that got 2 holes. You've got your presser foot, and then you've got the actual power. So mine are color-coded, yeehaw. Other things on this machine is, you've got, so here I have a digital machine. You may have an acoustic machine. This is not a, it's a joke, thank you. But, so all of your stitches are typically here, or they're on a dial with a bunch of the little icons on here. So for example, here's my straight stitch. Here is my, there's also different placements of the needle. Like this one has a little to the left. This one is straight center. This one is left of center. On some old school machines, it's just a dial, and then it has like 6 is 1 stitch length, 7 is a wider length, and then another length. So on mine, I have stitch length up here, or stitch length up here. So mine is at default 2.5. If I keep pressing up, it goes up, so my stitch length is longer. For example, why do you want to do this? This would be for things like basting. I fucking hate hand sewing. So for me, I like using basting for gathering stitches. So when you take a lot of fabric and then you put it onto a smaller surface, so that, for example, dresses have a lot of volume on it. Here is something that does something, I don't remember, and then this is how I choose which stitch I want. So my default stitch on here that I always do is 1. So this is the straight stitch dead center. So you can tell by this little dot, the little dot right there, where it is. This is how you make a bobbin. What is a bobbin? A bobbin is the thing underneath this. This is called a needle plate. There's also little lines. You will need these lines for guiding your length of fabric where your needle is. So how you determine the length is based on your needle placement and then your fabric end placement here. You want most of your fabric always on the left side because this is not a lot of room. So this is your shuttle cover for your bobbin. This is your needle plate. This is your needle. And then this is your presser foot. So you change this by just, this is the presser foot down. This is using the presser foot. This is always located right next to or behind the needle. And you can, it has some give. So it can go up a little bit more. That happens, it's very necessary for when you got a lot of fabric or thicker fabric. It just fucking comes off and then it reveals these things called teeth. What's funny is this is also called a feed dog. The thing in front of it is a feed dog. The thing behind it, these are the teeth. I love when things are labeled in a way that makes sense. If you need to change your needle, the way that you do that is right underneath right here, there is a stick. And on the stick, there is a turny thing. And the turny thing you can use, sometimes you need to use a flat like needle nose, not needle nose pliers. You know what? I do actually use needle nose pliers on it. Something like that. A screwdriver flathead to unscrew the needle, and you can remove the needle. Why would you need to do that? Needles break. One, I've had them break a lot. If you're using the wrong needle, it's more likely to break. Two, if you have different density fabric, so thickness. If you're sewing jeans, you need a ball pointed one. If you're sewing satin, you need a different one, because if you have a giant ball trying to go through satin, it's gonna cause it to have really excessively large holes. Other things, so my machine has a special feet things on here. So like, for example, this is a buttonhole foot edition that can be pulled down and put on it. Here's another one. Each one of these feet are labeled. So this is the J foot. There's all kinds of different foots, like zipper foots. My fancy sewing machine has the label on here for you can choose one of these and it'll tell you which foot to use. It's really cool. There's a small engraving on your foot as to what kind of foot it is. This is an S, but suck a dick is what it stands for. I use it for whatever I want. I like it because it has this guide. I highly suggest getting one of these if you're new to sewing. I also like using it because then I don't have to stare and squint at these little tiny lines. So work smarter, not harder. This foot is a very good example of what it looks like when you sew. So this is dead center where the needle goes. And then you can use these little, so like when I'm doing narrow hems, I put my fabric here. When I'm doing like just a more narrow than the standard seam allowance, I go to the edge right here. And then your standard seam allowance is like right here. And then there's other countries that use different like centimeters to inches. So like American patterns use 5/8 seam allowance and then other ones use other ones. We'll get into what seam allowance is later, but that's okay. We're still going on with this. So you've got your bobbin. The way that sewing works is it has two threads. It has the top thread and then it has the bobbin under thread. It's fucking sorcery. It's really cool, but it's how your fabric stays together. So the first thing you do is you have your bobbin and you thread it. But how do you make a bobbin? Oh, what? And help on memorizing all this stuff is on the anatomy of a sewing machine and all the resources I have for y'all. But this is a naked bobbin. It's got little holes on it. So the way that you do a bobbin is you take your spool of thread up here. Yes, it's cut off a little bit, but it's just fine. I just shoved it on this. So if your spool holder's short, it comes out, I promise. It looks weird, but just pull that hoe out. Slap this bitch on here. And then on the top of your machine, you typically have a diagram on how the fuck to do this. Super cute. There's a little slot that you need to shove it into first. So up here, you shove it into it. And then you go around the little circle piece, the donut on top. So I'm going around the circle piece on top. Damn, you can't see it all. And it shows you which direction, so you know which which thread needs to go on top of which thread. And then you thread your bobbin, because it's just easier that way. So there's a little hole. You want to go from the inside up into the bobbin. So you can see that I have my thread on here. And my thread is inside of the bobbin and my thread is coming out the top. So then you place it on your bobbin holder, and then the important thing is you need to make it begin making a bobbin. So you have to scoot this over to the right until it clicks, and then you hold on to it for dear life. I like to wrap it around my finger, and then you just press go on the pedal. Rocket science. And then it'll just go. So I circled it around my finger so that it doesn't disappear when I press go. And you can make it as big as you want. It's good to have like your default colors like black and white. I make those bobbins thick as fuck. But if I'm doing a project with like a specific shade of thread, I'm not going to use a gazillion times that I don't. Or you can go on Amazon, get this for $5 and get a gajillion bobbins in a case, so you don't have to worry about it. So I'm just going to press go on the bobbin with the pedal foot, and then it starts making it. Yeehaw. Sorcery. Super cool. So then you have your bobbin. So then you cut your string, and then you got your bobbin, magic, bloop. Baby's first bobbin. And then the way that you thread the bobbin is your machine will have an engraving on it to show what direction you want your string going inside of the little actual bobbin holder. So you shove it in there, and there will be a little kind of like, I don't even know how to describe it. You need a floss. This is my best description, but it will show you on the machine how it should look. So I'm gonna thread this little piece right here, and I can tell it's on there because now when I move the thread, it's not going over here or over on top of the bobbin. If it's on top of the bobbin, then the machine will not catch it, and we don't like that. And then usually there is a small little engraving hole right here where you can just bloop, you put your thread. And mine has a tooth on it, like a razor blade, where you just bloop, so it takes it off. Some of them don't have that. It doesn't matter. As long as it is, you can either do it like that if your machine has the piece, or if your machine doesn't have this little piece for it to feed in, because I've worked on different machines that don't have it. As long as it's fed in, it can be sticking out right here, because that's where it's going to be pulled out of anyway. I know that seems really strange, but yes, there's a little tiny hole right there that your thread goes through, and that's how your machine picks it up. So how do we go from bobbin feeding to feeding the actual machine? So there's also bobbin makers that you can just buy and press a button, and as long as you feed it into it, it'll just automatically make one if your machine's broken. So like my sibling's machine is broken up here on the bobbin winder. So we pull the thread out of the bobbin maker. So now is the actual threading the machine. So the thread, I'm going to show you where it's going to go first. It's going to go across the machine. Butter's just going to knock shit over in my bathroom. And it's going to go over this metal piece. This piece is metal so that it doesn't fray your thread on the plastic. And then it'll go through here. It looks really cool. And then it's going to go around this. This is called your tension control. So up and down on it will change the tension of the bottom thread and the top thread. Why would you need to change this? So depending on your fabric type, like for example, stretchy fabrics need a different number and thick fabrics need a different number. I like using it mostly for when I do gathering, because if you have a very loose tension, you can literally just pull your threads around in this way. If you go all the way around your threads, your tension is going to be super tight between the locking of the top and bottom thread. So I have it on middle. 4 is typically the middle for all machines. So this is just normal tension. And then after it goes through the tension dial, it will go up into this thing. You will see a little hook-like object where it can get hooked in the back of it, and then it will hold it in the front of the hook. And then it goes down the machine, and then that's when you thread it. Magic. Yeah, so this is a thread guide, tension, take up lever is the weird hooky thing I was talking about, and then it goes into the needle. Magic, sorcery. So let me show you how to do it. It will have to go through the back right here on the, what the fuck is this thing called, bitch? I don't know. It's got to go on this thing back here. I really don't know what it's called. But the thing that would go on the bobbin is where it goes. And instead of going across and looping around this little disc and going to the bobbin holder, you're going to hook onto that thing and then go down through here into your pressure, your tension control, hook on your take up lever, and then down. So you should feel a little bit of tension here. If it's at the highest setting, it will be tight as fuck. If it's in the lowest setting, it'll be like you're threading just empty pieces. And then that's when you thread your needle. If you're an old lady, you can use, you know, I use that term not in a literal sense, but in a yo eyes is fucked sense. But I find that machine needles are bigger than the typical hand needles, so I can thread them super easy. Boom! Baby's first thingy. I'm gonna show you one more time. So you have your thread. You're gonna go across the top of the machine into the first hooky thing. And then you're gonna go across the thread guide into the tension control. And then you're gonna go up and you need to hook it onto the take up lever and then down. And then this is when you thread your needle. Okay, so next, how do you actually sew? So then you place your fabric here and then you just sew. So you just press this and then it goes. Wow, magic sorcery. But so you see how my needle is still in the fabric? I need to get fabric out. How do I get fabric out? The way that you get fabric out is you have this thing on the right side. So it moves your needle manually. Why would you want to do this? For what I just showed you, so that we can actually remove the fabric. Bloop, and now you can cut. Or if you have a tight corner that's got a lot of fabric, you can manually make your machine go. Sometimes your fabric is too thick, your machine is tired, or your needle is getting dull. This can help you get through those big corners, those big layers, and it can help give you precision because this is the slowest the machine will go, is how fast you fucking manually do it. So it's very helpful for when everything's fucked and you just need it to be more precise. I use it all the fucking time. So that's how you sew. It's really cool. The only other note is when you're sewing, you let the machine do the work. So you should not be shoving your fabric with both hands. Your hands should be guides. So you should be able to use 2 fingers and rotate your fabric. Shit like that. So again, do not shove the fabric in, turn, no. You are just guiding it through the machine. The feet will pull it through magically. It is sorcery. I don't know how these machines work, except 2 fabric, hook locked together with needle. Super cool. One last thing is when you actually start sewing, the way that you do it is you put your fabric in, and then you sew a couple stitches. So you press go a little bit. And then you press back. So you're gonna back stitch. So this is how you make your stitch not like pull, or your fabric not just open. Then you back stitch a little bit. So mine has a button. You may have a reverse switch lever. So the way that you do that is, I've worked with machines where the lever's right here. You engage it and then you press the foot at the same time, and then you release it and then you keep sewing the correct direction. So you'll see the fabric go this way and that way. On other machines, I've had the switch be over here where I used to, and then it does it. But this is an analog machine, not an acoustic machine. One other thing is you may have a stitch length dial, shit like that. But every machine is different, but every machine is exactly the same. Let's see, let me think of anything else. I think that's everything you need to get started. So like, just say fuck it and try, make mistakes. My first dress, you know, I did the thing. I made a gajillion mistakes. It's challenging, but you know, now I sew crazy shit. And that dress actually is the seat cover on my performance chair. I actually took apart the seams and then I used the fabric on the cushion on that chair. So I upholstered the chair. Oh, one other thing on a machine is typically they have a little piece right here that has a blade on it. So I'm gonna move this camera and it's gonna be fucked up forever. So you have this little piece right here where you can actually pull stitches there, or you can pull this and cut it right there. But this is super sharp. I've never seen anybody pull stitches on here. I've seen people use the stitch puller. on here, but yeah, it's super helpful. Also, when you pull stitches, I highly suggest you Google how to do it so you're not pulling stitches individually. Alright, so here we've got everything you need. If you look at the resource sheet, it says it. So you need that small little ruler, the patterns, scissors, pens, that's a little tiny more scissors, tailor's chalk, Velcro, thread, obviously, and then you'll need about a foot of fabric. So if you have any remnants, that works very nicely. An optional thing you may need is hot glue. It's just used in case you don't feel like sewing your Velcro, or if your Velcro already has sticky backing, shit like that. So the first thing you'll need to do is actually print the pattern, which you don't see right here because I already have it printed. But you print the pattern, the widest part of the rectangle should be 9.5 inches long. So you do fit to page and it should be just fine. So whenever you are doing your fabric, typically you do cutting patterns on a fold on your fabric, but this one is only 1 layer thick, which is very rare, by the way. So lay your shit out straight. I'm using a rock so that my shit doesn't fall on me, and then place your patterns. On typical patterns, they actually show you the best way to lay all of your pattern pieces down on your fabric, but just lay it however works on your remnant, because, you know, remnants are the best application for this. But also, this way, that little rectangle is going to be what's going to be around the circumference of your actual microphone. So position it as you'd like in that way. So now I'm just pinning all of these pieces down. You can use rocks and a rotary wheel, if you know what that is. It's a pizza cutter on this big flat piece of plastic ass thing. So I just use scissors because I don't have enough room on my table. Whatever. Yas. Alright, so now we gonna be cutting this shit. So you're cutting around the outside border. There are also some markings you need to be sure that you cut to. There's those little tiny triangles around the edges. They're called notches. So what those do is when you're actually sewing your pattern together, you match those notches together. It's very important for things like shirts and dress, any clothing, you know, anything you sew. You need those notches, because if you don't, you're gonna end up having a sleeve where your ass is. What can I say? So the same thing applies to this. That notch will match a specific part of that circle and vice versa, and it really just makes life easier. So here I am cutting. So I cut it really ugly really first because, as you can see, I'm struggling a little bit, and you gotta work smarter, not harder. So cut ugly so you can cut pretty instead of fucking it all up. If you look on my pattern, you can see those little like dotted line areas. They also say on the pattern to cut there too. So what that is it's a little fold opening, where if you look on a SHURE SM7B, there's a hole where a wire comes out of. So that makes space for the wire to come out of that hole. You did it! And now I'm just, you know, cleaning up because I got OCD and it's gotta be pretty, because I don't like having that many wrinkles in my fabric when I store it. Ta-da! Remember what I said 5 seconds ago? Yeehaw, look at me. We're cutting them their little notch right there to help with our sewing process. And then as you can see here, I'm pointing to that wacky little area where the cord will come out. So you're just gonna cut right here. This is also how you make like weird openings for pockets, weird ways you can do some buttons, wide. It's very, I don't remember the name of this fucking little thing, but it's so that you can make a rectangle hole with a finished edge is what I'm trying to say. It's very nice. Lovely. So now you gotta be sure to copy all of the markings on your pattern. So this pattern, there's 3 circles. There's one there, there's one there, and then there's also one on the little tiny circle in front of this rectangle. So I mark these with big ass X's. You can do circles, you can do whatever. Taylor's chalk is kind of hard to deal with. Some of it's too brittle, some of it's not too soft, you know, so this is just one that's okay. I don't love it, but the purpose is for marking it and then it washing off in the wash, or some of them are heat, so you can iron it and poof, there goes your marking. It's a good and bad thing. So the markers are really good but really bad also. The pens are really good but really bad also. They all suck, I'll be honest. I'm just gonna sit here and rant to you how shitty it is. Alright, so now we on step 6. So what we're doing is we're ironing down a 1/2 inch on the unnotched edge, so the edge without the little triangle. So it's the one I just pointed to. This terminology that I use on here that says folding the wrong sides touching is important for things like when you're doing sleeves and clothes, because all of the sudden when you start doing the things, your shit's all fucked up and your actual design is on the inside of your clothes. So right sides, wrong sides touching is very important. So in this application, we're folding the wrong sides together because we are making the finished edge. So this fancy little tool I have in my hand is a tailor's ruler. It's amazing because, as you can see, I'm pointing to it, that little blue thing right there. It lets you be able to set a length so you can use it consistently. So for example, I can measure the 1/2 inch on the unnotched edge that we're doing right now, and I can keep that length consistently across the entire thing. See that little thing right there, put that thing right there, and then boom, 1/2 inch right there, and then I'll just go left a gajillion times until it is all exactly a 1/2 inch. Because if you're not precise, then your shirt all of a sudden is going to be extra small on one side and large on the other side, and we don't want that. That's yucky. Yes, you did it. So next we're doing step 7, which we are turning down, aka folding the corner. And when we fold the corner, that means we can have a beautiful, nice little tuck on the other side. And you can choose to cut off the corner where we are ironing down right now, or you can leave it there. The point is we want a very sharp corner, and this helps you get a really sharp corner. So you'll see me cut it in a moment. So now you're folding the smaller sides and ironing them down. So as you can see, we're doing a folded over perimeter, same amount, a 1/2 inch. I'm checking my work with a ruler, but the triangle on the corner right there, it actually helps you guide as the same length because it's an equilateral or something like that. I don't fucking know. Right angle triangle? I don't know. I didn't do geometry except for when I did it. Aha! And we are continuing the fold all the way down that entire edge. Okay, so you're gonna repeat it on the other side too. I'm gonna skip that part of the video. Okay, go. Bam! Surprise! I scared my cat when I said that. Look, a machine! Okay, so you're gonna thread your machine and we're gonna start actually sewing. Oh my god. If it's your first time sewing, I suggest you start just sewing some doo-doo fabric scraps you have just to practice putting shit through the machine and not being terrified of this needle coming down at 1,000,000 miles an hour and shit. So what I'm doing, as you can see on the bottom right hand corner of the screen, I am putting pins in my fabric on all of the little nooks and crannies so that when you sew, you don't lose your shit. I put my needles perpendicular instead of with your fabric. So as you can see, it looks like a porcupine. So this way I don't lose my what are these called? Needles. So this way I don't lose my needles. And then also it's just easier to work with the placement of your hands and your stitch and your fabric. I promise. It's just a good technique. But if you don't want to do that, don't fucking do it. But I find it's easiest for me. So let's start sewing. We will be sewing 1 centimeter away from the edge. So what that references is the needle is sewing 1 centimeter from the right side, which is the smaller part, aka the edge. And as you just saw, I just did a back stitch to keep my machine from, well, not the machine, it keeps the fabric from dying at the end so it comes apart. We don't want that. We want it to stay forever. That was a really small stitch because it's that edge where it's about like 1.5 inches. Then we're going to continue. We're going to do the same thing where we sew a little bit and then we back stitch, and I'm pulling pins as we go. That's the back stitch. And now we're going forward. Woo! And then when you get to the corner, this is the fun part. So you're going to eyeball what looks to be the right seam allowance, which is the word you use for like the length from the right side to the left side, so aka the edge of your fabric to your actual stitch. Let me show that to you again. So the way you're going to do this corner is you're going to sew until you hit that seam allowance, so about 1 centimeter. Then you're going to put your needle all the way through, lift up your presser foot, rotate your fabric, so it should be loose enough for you to rotate like that. So it should be almost exactly the correct seam allowance again, and then you just keep going. There's no back stitching, just wham bam, there you go. Here you're gonna see me do that their corner one more time. Find your seam allowance, get to it, put your needle all the way down, lift your presser foot, rotate easily, find your seam allowance, and go. So that's, it looks easy, but I've done it a million times. So if you don't get all the way to the edge or the correct distance, that's fine. Just up, down, do it again. Just keep stitching. It's fine. I ain't gonna tell nobody. I'm back stitching because we're at an edge, and then I'm gonna do the same again on a little tiny like 1.5 centimeter part. Wow, look, you did it. Baby's first narrow hem. So normal hem typically folds under one more time. So there is a raw edge exposed, but that's where the microphone's going, and this isn't closed, so we don't give a fuck. It's fine. So we're just trimming all the threads. Okay, so this next part is pretty challenging. What you're going to be doing is step 10 on the description sheet on the resources on the pattern. So you're ironing down 1/2 inch on the weird sliced part sides, wrong sides to touch. So what this is it's making a clean hole where your wire will come out of, where the fold is going to go over. So I am folding over those dotted lines marked on the pattern. Easy peasy. So it's going to be 2 weird looking ass triangles and then 1 little tiny triangle on the small side. As you can see, that's what I'm doing right now. Folding with my pointer finger, and there's the tiny one. The other 2 sides are going to be pretty thick because it's technically having 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of fabric on it. So here we are, doing it again on the other side. Some of my thread got caught, so that's what I'm doing right now. I'm cutting that little threads that got caught. So this is at 2 times speed. As you can see, any of the faster parts is at 2 times speed. So I look like a speed demon. But yeah, no. It's the same thing, but faster, because that's how speed works. There you go. Stare at it. Wow. Amazing. I know I'm going to be saying this a lot, but here comes the hard part. Yes. So you're going to be sewing 1 centimeter from the edge. So pretty much just sew the fuck out of that little ridge we just made. It may look a little messy the first time you do it, but it's okay. I won't judge you. You're just trying to get the job done, have a clean edge, and if you have a thread that looks, you know, similar enough, it's gonna blend in. Ain't nobody gonna see it. But try your best. I suggest triple stitching along that little weird center triangle inlay, but do the corner technique where you turn. That's what I'm doing right now. And this is the little tiny triangle you're gonna thread over 3 times. Forward, backwards. Use that back stitching button. Alright, so we gonna do it again on the other side. Yee, hell yeah, brother. So now we're going to do what is called basting. So basting is a temporary stitch used to do many different things. I'm changing my stitch length to the longest possible, and then I'm changing my tension to either 0 or 9 depending. So I think bigger number means tighter stitch, lower number means looser stitch. We want it to be loose because it is just a guide. So it's going to be a 1/2 inch is how we're going to sew it. And it's just because visualizing where the stitch needs to be is challenging on a circle. So this is just making your life easier. And you'll see me lifting the presser foot because sometimes your stitch ends up too straight. We don't want it to be straight, we want it to be gay. So be sure to lift that stitch, lift up the presser foot as much as you need to make your stitch super circular. Alright, so now it's about to get weird, it's about to get hard. Yes, number 13 on the sheet literally says this is where it's get hard for a reason. So the goal is that circle is going to go on that raw edge, and it's going to make a cylinder out of it. So we're going to match the 2 circle markings, or X's, on your 2 pieces of fabric, and it's going to be beautiful. The easier way to do this is to sew that 1/4 inch tiny tab on like that smaller edge, and then it'll make your life easier whenever we are putting the circle on the rectangle. And right here I'm just remarking my little circles with X's because they kind of faded with all of the movement and manipulation I did on it. Teehee. So now we're going to make a circle out of the rectangle, and we're going to put those two tiny tabs on top of each other. We're going to match the two circle markings from the pattern together on here. So I'm matching the markings I have marked on my pattern together, and you should get some overlap. So it's going to be wrong side and right side together with that overlap right there. We're going to be sewing an 11 on it. So where my thumb is, where my pointer finger are, we're going to sew alongside in grain with the edge going on right there. There you go. So it's gonna look like that. It's gonna be like a lid. So we're gonna sew that little tab right there. Make sure you don't sew the other fabric with it. So only sew the pinned parts. Otherwise, you're gonna have a closed off flat piece of shit and you're gonna want to pull that stitch. So be sure you only sew through that fabric. See, I'm making sure to keep that fabric separate from the other fabric. It's challenging, I promise. It looks easy, but it's challenging. So you're sewing perpendicular to the circle or parallel to that edge that's finished. So how you're going to do this is you're going to make like an 11 on that tab. So as you can see, one part is sticking out over the other and the over another. That makes no sense. I promise it makes sense. So you're going to want it to be on one side close, and then we're going to sew on the other side close. So it's going to look like an 11 in line with that edge. So both sides of that little tiny like 1/4 inch tab is secure. Here we are doing the other side of the 11 of that tiny little tab. Alright, so here I'm showing you that little tab, that 11. It's sewed on my thumb and where my pointer finger is. Woo! Alright, now for the really fucking hard part on this whole project. So remember that circle where we matched the two circles on the rectangle that became the circle part, the big cylinder part? I'm pointing at the other circle on the circle that's marked on the pattern, and we're going to put it onto the marking that was on this thingy. So match the circles together. Match what you copied from the pattern together on the fabric. So there it is. And then there's a notch right here. So this is exactly across the street from the circle marking. So match the two notches together. Remember I said notches help you keep the pattern where things should be. That's what we're doing. And then we're gonna go around it, pin the fuck out of it, and make sure you do this really well because this will dictate how good your end product looks. So I like to work in halves. So you're gonna find like halfway on the circle and make it be halfway on the circumference, and then you're going to go around the whole thing like that, matching as well as possible. See, this is why the basting stitch was so important. It helps you see what the fuck's happening. So do as best as you can. It's gonna be great. Sweet. So now that you have a porcupine fucking mess, haha, trust the process. Promise, it's worth it. Now you gotta make sure to sew through only one side of the fabric and not catching anything else. Because what this is it's kind of a gather. See all those little ridges right there? We want to be sure that we sew only through what we need. Otherwise, you're going to get weird overfolded pockets of fuckery in corners. We don't want that. We want it to be straight and beautiful. So what I'm doing is I am putting the flatter side on the bottom. So this is the circle, it's the flatter side. And we put the fuckier side on top. So this is the long side of the rectangle. So we're putting that on top so we can watch it and be sure it doesn't get weird. If this is your first sewing project, this is going to be messy. But just accept it. Remember, you can always pull the stitch. So just try your best. So that's what I'm doing. I'm being sure that I'm sewing through only those two parts of fabric. And I'm not sewing through extra crunchy sides. Go slow. It's just fine. I'm using my left hand to pull tight those little sides so that we get perfect, beautiful little curves and swerves. This is kind of like a gathering stitch. So this is true to the normal speed. A lot of the video I have going up and down in speed. This is the true speed. I am sewing this very slowly because I don't want to have to pull the stitches and do it again. But if it's your first time, ain't no thing. Do it. You got it. Moment of truth. Hopefully I didn't catch anything under it. Ta-da! I didn't. Joke's on you. I already knew the end of this video. So I'm checking. Check your shit. I sewed right along that basting stitch that we did. And then I'm making sure that like nothing was pulled through and wasn't, because it's really common right there where I'm checking for it to have weird corners. So you can see there's a bit more of a gather right there where my left thumb is right there. And I'm making sure that doesn't happen. That's the thing I'm warning you about. It's not to have that happen. So you use that tool. It's called a stitch puller. or seam ripper. But everything's fine. Checking, checking, checking. I do this on every weird corner and weird stitch. Because you can just pass it through the machine again. It's fine. Now we're trimming the seam so that we don't have big bunches and big chunks all up in that seam. So I'm cutting it exactly halfway from the edge. And then after that, we're going to do these things called notches to be sure that the seam lays flat. And you can iron it if you feel it. It's just, you know, makes it super clean, but I couldn't care less. But there we go. So now we're going to do this thing called making more notches. So the point of this is that our seam lays flat. So this is good for like the underarms of a shirt, or you use this a lot when you're making stuffed animals. So like the paws of a teddy bear, it goes from a fabric inside out to right side in. No, 86 that, 69 that. Right sides are together, and then you gotta flip it, which means that you have all that fabric bunched along that seam. So to make it flatter and nice without these weird corners, trust me, it'll look like there's corners in it. You can prevent that by doing these little notches. Or you can skip it. It's just a fucking microphone cover. So now it's time for the funnest part of the whole project. It's the moment of truth. So we're flipping it inside out to look at our whole ass project, and you can iron down these edges if you're feeling spicy. Or you can do what I'm doing, where I'm just, you know, I'm pressing it with my fingies to pop out all the fabric, because it's all tucked up. It just got sewn. You wouldn't want to be flipped inside out if you were just sewn together with thread. I lied. I am actually ironing it, but just a little bit. Don't tell anybody. Ta-da! You did it! Baby's first project. So the last part is adhering Velcro. As you can see, we made a beautiful tab to put the Velcro on so that we can put this on our microphone. Ta-da! And there's a little hole for the wire. And then there's the tab again. That's the last part. Super cute. Oh, and Velcro is also called hook and loop fastener. Super weird. Here we got our Velcro. There's many different kinds of Velcro. This one that I have, it is sticky on the back. If you don't feel like sewing anymore, you're more than welcome to hot glue that bitch on there. But mine has sticky back, so I just adhere it onto there. Or you can sew it if it doesn't already have the sticky. If I were to choose one, I would sew it on there. Because think about it, you're just having to pull the actual fabric apart. If it's, you know, weak, shitty Amazon brand stuff is pretty good, actually. If it's Amazon brand glue and it's gonna take the entire Velcro off with you. Like, that's a lot of fuss. But this one, I just fucking slap it on there. It's fine. A reason why you may not want to sew through it is, so this one does have sticky. If you do sticky and sewing at the same time, your machine is going to get all gunked up with the glue through the needle and the string. We don't want that to happen. So as you can see, I'm also measuring it with a ruler, which is very meticulous. You can skip measuring and you can literally just look at your flap, put Velcro on it, measure with the Velcro on there, cut that bitch, and then just adhere it. That's it. So I'm being meticulous just because these are the measurements I gave y'all on my actual pattern. So here I missed a cute little tab right there. Bloop, 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 bloop. So I'm cutting a little extra and I'm slapping it on there. Teehee. It's fine. Me fix. That's the good thing about this stuff. You can fix it. Ta-da. So I should have put the Velcro a little bit farther towards the edge, so it's got a lot of that loose fabric. Whoopsie! So next time I'll be putting it closer on that edge. But there you go. It's all closed, so my hand is where your microphone will go. So cute! So here we are. Here's one that I already have. Easy to remove. So this again is the adhering Velcro, not the nice Velcro that you sew on. So some of the pieces do come off. You know, the hot glue's dying. Where that little ring is, that's where I typically hot glue. See that strip? So that strip is how you can really make this shit stay on there, but you don't need it. So that's me just removing it completely. So I don't have that rough Velcro around my, like the circumference of my microphone anymore. I just have the little tab snug because I'm not manhandling my microphone or anything. So I just use the tab. That's it. That's all it needs. And then I'm putting the piece that fell off. So right there, that's how it stays on. Ain't no thing. So that's where you can hot glue it to your microphone. So hot glue is nice because you can just rip it off pretty easy, but also it's not nice because you can just rip it off easy. But the pattern is fitted to have space for the other piece of Velcro. So that's why it's a little looser if you don't. But I'm showing you how to put this new lovely cover onto your microphone. That little weird hole part goes right there. And then you tuck it. And then you tuck it in like a little sleeping bag. So sweet. Ta-da. And then you tuck the tab. And you tuck the wire around it. Ta-da. And the hole fits perfectly. Ah! Stunning. Glorious. Look at you. You're professional. Swerve. And if you're making this for a friend, it works too, because anyone who has one, it will fit their microphone. Pinky promise. Unless you fucked up really bad. But, you know, that's another problem. But congratulations. If you're still here, holy fuck, this is a long video. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Please spread the word of the bird. Spread my videos. Spread this video. Spread love. I don't know. Help each other out. Boost my content so I can make more stuff. Interacting really does help my channel, so please, I don't know, comment, like, sub, all the things. If you have an idea of something you want to see me do, make, teach, just holler, and then I can make more fun stuff that everybody's gonna have a good time. We have a great community here. But yeah, good job. You did it.